A Rabbit in a Blue Jacket sold 150 million copies. Its creator was a 36-year-old woman who had never married. Her mother called her an embarrassment. Her social circle laughed at her eccentricity. Even publishers thought she was crazy. But this woman, with her own strength, bought vast tracts of land in England's Lake District, which would later be designated a cultural heritage site. To this day, that region still attracts tens of millions of visitors, and her life story is 10,000 times more fascinating than the fairy tale she wrote. Potter was an upper-class aristocratic lady. Though she had never known want as a child, she had a passion for painting and longed for financial independence, so she took her first self-written story and went from publisher to publisher. Unfortunately, each attempt ended in failure. Publishers immediately concluded that children's books had no market. After all, romance novels were what dominated the era. Potter was used to such outcomes. But today, things took a turn. The publisher agreed to print her work. Potter was thrilled, thinking her talent had finally been recognized. In truth, however, this was a carefully laid trap. The Warren family had 3 brothers. The 2 older brothers ran the family publishing business. The youngest, Norman, was eager to join, but their mother was reluctant to let her youngest son suffer the hardships of the outside world. She wanted to keep him at home to care for her, so the 2 elder brothers decided to hand over this doomed fairy tale book of Potter to Norman, hoping he would realize the difficulty, then give up and return home to be with their mother. The next day, Norman came to visit. Unlike his brothers, Norman truly admired Potter's work. Such lively, engaging illustrations, he thought, would stand out brilliantly among all those dull books. He saw their artistic value and market potential, but Potter worried that printing the illustrations in color would increase costs too much, making the book too expensive for readers to buy. Norman immediately offered a solution: reduce the number of illustrations by 1/3, keeping them under 31, and use 3-color process printing, which would achieve color effects while keeping costs down. Potter had assumed Norman was just sent by his brothers to brush her off, but as their conversation deepened, she found he had come prepared with sincerity and professional strategy. During their talk, she learned this was his first job, and that he, too, wanted to prove himself. The 2, finding much in common, quickly agreed to work together. They arranged to meet at the printing press to supervise the color correction of the illustrations. Who could have imagined that? This chance encounter would lead 2 dreamers to usher in a new era for children's books. When the first illustration was printed, Potter immediately saw it was too dark and blurry. The workers brightened the colors and reprinted. In the second version, the colors were faint at the edges. They made adjustment after adjustment, until the printed colors matched the original paintings almost exactly. The 2 of them strictly oversaw every step of the process, doing everything in their power to make it as perfect as possible. Soon, the first copy of The Tale of Peter Rabbit was completed. Seeing the palm-sized book fully realized before them, their excitement was beyond words. After leaving the press, Potter could no longer contain her joy. She said this book was bound to change her life, because it would prove to her mother that a 32-year-old unmarried woman could do more than attend tea parties. She could also have a career of her own. Before long, Norman invited Potter to his home. His family had long wanted to meet her, especially Norman's sister, Millie. She, also a non-marriage advocate, adored Potter. They felt an instant connection and quickly became kindred spirits. Norman's mother also took a great liking to Potter. In this home, Potter felt genuine respect and affection, something she had never experienced in her own house. Potter's mother never understood her efforts. Instead, she complained constantly, saying Potter shouldn't associate with a businessman like Norman. In that era of rigid class distinctions, even being seen with a tradesman was regarded as a degradation of status. Her mother insisted a woman's destiny was to manage a household and raise children, so she arranged many suitors for Potter: an aristocratic young man who did nothing but bleat like a sheep, a chubby military officer who smacked his lips while eating, a marksman with effeminate manners. All were from high-ranking, well-matched families. Potter went through the motions with her mother and the suitors, but in her heart, she had long decided never to marry. Then one day, Norman showed up uninvited at Potter's door. Without taking no for an answer, he ushered her into a carriage and brought her to a bookstore. There, in the large window display, were her children's books. Norman excitedly told her, in just 1 week, this shop had sold 40 copies. At this rate, that would be 160 copies a month, 1,920 a year, and that was a conservative estimate for just one bookstore. Their collaboration had been a tremendous success. Potter was now a genuine author, but her joy was soon replaced by disappointment, because the book's release meant their partnership was coming to an end. Hearing this, Norman instinctively reached out a hand, a bit flustered, saying he would like to continue working with her, and promised that as long as she was willing to draw, he would always be her publisher.
Your book has been very important in my life. You have been very important in my life.
And you in mine, Mr. Warren.
You must do it again and again.
And again.
I promise you I intend to be a nuisance.
Norman's suggestion reminded Potter of her childhood. Every summer, her family would spend 3 months in the Lake District to escape the heat. There she had befriended the estate manager's son, gaining her very first fan, and that poetic region had also given her endless creative inspiration. Potter threw herself into writing new stories. The animals in her paintings seemed to come one after another as if they were old friends meeting again. Soon, The Tale of Two Bad Mice was published. Norman sent the first bound copy to Potter. Their frequent correspondence gradually allowed feelings to blossom between them. Sensing something was afoot, Potter's mother wanted to put a stop to this inappropriate situation. situation, but Potter beat her to it, telling her father she wanted to invite Norman and his sister to spend Christmas with them. Her mother immediately objected. Everyone coming to the dinner party was from high society. Inviting inferior tradespeople would simply ruin the mood. As the two women argued, Potter's father calmly pulled from his pocket a copy of the inexpensive children's book. It turned out that his daughter's work had already become a favorite among children, yet he was the last to know. He offered his daughter a somewhat clumsy apology. The little girl he had thought would never grow up was now a renowned painter.
So I don't see any reason why we cannot make a little social effort to welcome the gentleman responsible for this blessing into our home.
Thank you, Father.
At Christmas, the house was decorated in resplendent gold. The Warren siblings arrived as promised. Potter eagerly introduced them to her parents. At the table, the aristocrats, bound by etiquette, exchanged hollow pleasantries. Bored, Potter invited Norman to see her studio. He was the first man, besides her father and brother, to ever enter it. Though it was somewhat improper, they kept the door open and spoke freely. Potter gave Norman a painting as a Christmas gift. She also mentioned the music box her father had given her when she was 6, with paintings her father had done himself. It turned out that in his youth, Potter's father had loved painting too, but family opposition had led him to abandon it and become a lawyer instead. As the music box played, the wine and the melody together brewed an atmosphere between them. After a dance that brought their hearts close together, Norman could no longer suppress his feelings. He confessed his love. He knew Potter had decided never to marry, and he had thought he would do the same, but recent events had changed his mind. He was afraid that if he didn't speak now, he would never have the chance. But before he could finish, her mother entered the room, and everything stopped. Potter's heart, however, could not settle. After the guests had left, she took Millie outside and told her that Norman had proposed. She wanted Millie's blessing, but they had once promised to remain lifelong non-marriage advocates. It felt wrong to go back on her word. To her surprise, Millie was completely supportive.
Marry him. Tomorrow. Don't waste a moment. How could you hesitate?
With Millie's encouragement, Potter no longer hesitated. She seized the moment while giving Norman's gift and told him how she felt. A quiet promise bound their hearts together in an instant. Potter ran back to her room like a young girl, shyly waving goodbye to Norman's departing carriage. She swayed to the music in her room, tears of happiness streaming down her face. The next day, Norman went to Potter's father to ask for her hand in marriage, but the conversation lasted only 5 minutes. What followed was fierce parental opposition. They believed marrying a tradesman would bring shame upon themselves. If Potter insisted on being with Norman, she would be cut off from any family inheritance. Potter realized she could not continue this love with her family's support. So early the next morning, she went to the bank to inquire about her royalty earnings, to see if she could buy a small cottage in the countryside. The banker's answer nearly made her jaw drop. Her current assets were enough to buy several plots of land in city houses.
You're quite a wealthy woman, Miss Potter.
Potter was overjoyed. This meant she had the means to stand up to her parents, and the freedom to pursue her love. Back home, she was ready to confront her parents, but her father offered a compromise. Since both sides held firm to their beliefs, he said, why not let time test whether this love could endure? Summer was approaching. Her parents wanted her to follow tradition and go to the Lake District to escape the heat. After 3 months apart from Norman, if her feelings remained unchanged, they would no longer stand in her way. Hearing this, Potter immediately agreed, confidently declaring that her parents could start planning the wedding right away. A brief separation would only make their love stronger. On a snowy night, they silently pledged themselves to each other. And so, Potter boarded the train to the Lake District. Before it departed, she anxiously scanned the platform. Spotting a familiar figure, she immediately ran after him. But it wasn't Norman. Disappointed, she turned, only to find her beloved right before her eyes. Seeing Norman soaked through, Potter was filled with concern. He had come because he feared she would be bored on the train, and brought her a sample of the new book. Hidden by the steam of the engine, they exchanged a kiss. Little did they know that this farewell would be their last. As time slowly passed, their fervent passion and love never ceased. They exchanged love letters, pouring out their hearts to ease the pain of separation. During her stay in the Lake District, Potter also happened to meet her childhood fan, William. They recognized each other with surprise and caught up on their lives. The boy from long ago had now become a lawyer, as he had wished. He also showed Potter a farm that was about to be auctioned. That night, Potter wrote again to Norman, telling him all she had seen and heard. But this time, his reply did not come. A week later, Potter received a letter from Millie. An uneasy dread rose in her heart. She tore open the envelope and nearly fell. Norman was ill. Without a moment's hesitation, Potter took a carriage back to London through the night. On the way, she tried to reassure herself. He must have been delayed by something else, which was why he hadn't contacted her. But when she knocked on the door of Norman's home, the grim expression of his brother, the tearful embrace of his sister, everything was already clear without a word. Millie told her, Norman had been coughing all summer. Medicine didn't help. The cough grew worse and worse, and one night, he suddenly passed away. It had happened so suddenly, no one could believe it. Potter struggled to control her grief. She hadn't even made it to the funeral. Back home, Potter locked himself in her room. She had thought a brief separation would be followed by a long life together, but what awaited her was not reunion, but an eternal parting. The meals the servants brought, she never even looked at. She remained trapped in her grief, unable to escape. Potter tried to ease her heart by painting, but the peace she once knew seemed to have left with Norman. The animals in her imagination fled in fear. Her beautiful fairy tale world was shattered. Frustrated, everything she painted turned into wasted paper. Only after Millie knocked many times did Potter finally admit she couldn't accept this truth. She fell into Millie's arms, as if all strength had drained from her, and wept. After being stabbed so cruelly by fate, she realized that a heart really can break into pieces. Later, Potter bought the Hilltop Farm in the Lake District. It was meant to be her home with Norman, but now she moved in alone. Her parents, guilty over Norman's death, could not bear to see her leave home, but Potter did not blame them. She thought it was simply fate's cruel hand at work. She tried to face life positively, but grief still surrounded her. The days at the farm felt endless. At night, her pillow was often soaked with tears. During the day, she sat in a daze, her brush in hand, unable to bring it down. Then, one morning, she was woken by birdsong. Summoning her courage, she stepped outside. The dew was still wet. The air smelled of grass and earth. A thin mist floated over the distant lake. The world outside was so vast. Suddenly, she felt that the enormous stone pressing on her heart had cracked open just a little. Potter picked up her brush again. Healed by the beauty of nature, her inspiration began to flow once more. Besides finding creative material in the woods, she also started growing her own vegetables. When she heard that a nearby farmer, struggling to make a living, planned to sell his farm to developers, she sought William's help as her lawyer. She bid 3 times the asking price to buy the farm, and kept the tenant farmers on to continue working the land, preserving the farm's natural state. Her only goal was to protect this beautiful natural landscape. A furious developer accused her of wasting commercial resources. Potter did not hold back her reply.
This place, this community, is an inspiration. It should be conserved for future generations and not destroyed. It deserves protection.
From that day on, the great mission of the second half of her life shifted from painting to buying land. With the substantial wealth earned from her published books, Potter purchased over 4,000 acres of farmland in the area. She had used her pen to earn her fortune, and then used that fortune to protect a piece of the world. 8 years after moving to the Lake District, Potter and William married. There was no grand wedding, no expensive gown, just 2 people who understood each other, keeping each other company, holding hands and continuing through life. They had no children, but the mountains and fields were their children. On December 22, 1943, just before Christmas, snow covered the rolling peaks of the Lake District. Beatrix Potter passed away quietly, at the age of 77. She left a will. All the farmland and assets that he had purchased were all donated through a trust institution to the British people. To this day, England's Lake District still looks much as it did in her paintings nearly 100 years ago. And her work, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, remains one of the best-selling children's books of all time.